EU interior ministers are meeting in Malta today as part of an ongoing conference to break the deadlock on asylum seekers in Europe. The two-day conference aims to reform the so-called Dublin rules, which put the onus on refugee resettlement on the first country of arrival, notably Italy and Greece. The lack of burden sharing among EU member states and the disjointed response to the migration crisis has appalled NGOs, who warn that people will continue to lose their lives unless action is taken. One NGO is also sounding the alarm on the plight of child migrants, 10,000 of whom have disappeared since arriving in Europe. Well, for more on this, we can cross to Malta and speak with Delphine Moralis from Missing Children in Europe. Ms. Moralis, thank you so much for joining us here on France 24 this morning. Europol say 10,000 child migrants have disappeared since arriving in Europe. Just how is this possible and where do they go?
Well, these students go missing for many different reasons. They go missing because they are not provided with appropriate accommodation. They go missing because of very lengthy procedures, for instance, to be reunified with their family or to continue their journey. They go missing because they do not receive the right information on risks and on rights. And so for many reasons, children become vulnerable and lose trust in authorities and decide to continue their journey either on their own or with smugglers and traffickers that continue bringing them and in many times exploiting them along the route. So it is a problem that we have seen and that has existed before, but in the current migration setting, it is clear that more children have gone missing and have become a victim of exploitation of different forms.
Well, what do you say can be done to reverse this situation?
Over the past days, we've been discussing with the stakeholders here in Malta that 3 lines of action are clearly needed for this to be changed. First, the EU has committed now 20 months ago in the EU agenda on migration that it would set up a comprehensive plan to protect all children in migration. And it is clear that this is urgently needed. We see that the current approach is fragmented, that it leads to disharmony, that it leads to conflict between different systems. So we need to have that coordinated approach to make sure that all children are protected in the migration route. And it is high time for that plan to come out. Secondly, children need to be a priority in the asylum and migration policies. Children make up close to 30% of the migrant population applying for protection in the EU. And it is clear that they need to be the group that receives the highest protection. And for that to happen, they need to be a priority in the migration and asylum policies. And last but certainly not least, children need to be empowered as rights holder. All of the EU member states have signed the Convention on the Rights of the Child. And under that context, they need to make sure that children have the right reception, the right accommodation, access to education, access to health, access to information, and that they be listened to and that their best interest be at the heart of any decision taken on their well-being and their future, which is currently sadly not the case.
OK, just quickly, how hopeful are you that any kind of progress can be made in Malta towards this, this wish list, as it were, given the EU's track record so far?
Sure. I think one of the points that is important to make is that this is not only the EU that has a responsibility here. Clearly, we see that the national authorities have a role to play. When you look, for instance, at the relocation plan, sadly, only 171 children have been relocated from Greece over the past months, while many children are, in fact, actually waiting for a bed, waiting for decent and proper accommodation in Greece. We can do better. Member states, with the right political will, can make a change happen. We see that at the conference we are organising these days, stakeholders are aligned, stakeholders see the same protection gaps, and we know what needs to be done. We need to have the political will to go on, a political will that needs to come from the national leaders to make Europe function in this really important crisis.
Absolutely, but like you say, there is no political will at present, partly because public attitudes to immigration and asylum seem to be hardening. So how do you propose to combat this?
Well, I think one of the things we need to understand is that protection is an essential element of security, and there is a lot of concern around security due to recent events also in Europe. But what we do see is that if we fail to protect children, we create opportunities for organised crime, and organised crime threatens security in Europe. So we need to change that rhetoric, we need to change that narrative, and look at how by protecting children, we don't only protect them, but we also protect our security and our societies in Europe. And it allows them to grow, but also us as a society to be with them.
Delphine Moralis, I'm afraid we will have to leave it there, but thank you so much for speaking to us here on France 24 this morning. That's Delphine Moralis from Missing Children in Europe. Well, it's 7